all the different options for your core customer. Some of my clients, most of them don't have this, but some of them find that when they really go out and look at it in a holistic way, that their core customer today is not their core customer tomorrow. There's an opportunity of a problem that's not being fully solved somewhere else, and they have to morph or transition to a different kind of customer. But often what I've found is we don't go deep enough in our existing set of customers. Is if we really pay attention to the job they hire us to do, and are we fully solving that job, there are lots more things that we can do that they would value and pay us for that we don't do. We actually start to go wide, and we get back to that failure of the beginning. Most businesses don't fail from starvation. They fail from indigestion. We do too many things. We don't do them well enough. And then like something like this, or even a smaller crisis hits us and it drains our resources and puts us in a more vulnerable position. I've read, people say, businesses fail because they run out of cash. I'm like, they don't fail because they run out of cash. They ran out of cash because they didn't do a bunch of other stuff. And that's a lagging indicator to failure, right? You want the leading indicators to failure. And that's not really paying attention to customer problems, solving problem with solving, really, hiring the right people, loving them up and holding them to the standards. Those are all things that will help you to get through the inevitable difficult times. There will always be, what is that called? Low frequency, high impact events. We have them. So understanding, you don't have to understand when it's going to be or what it is, but understand that it will happen and prepare yourself as much as you can. Create resilient teams that can react quickly, have enough cash in the bank. Diversify a little bit, amongst what you do. Again, keep it within, don't go too wide, stay within a narrow frame, but diversify across things. So those are things that I think good leaders are always thinking about. And the reason they think about it is because they fire themselves from the day to day because they have time to think, right? And time to contemplate and discuss and debate these things with their team. That's what you should be doing.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems that a good leader doesn't need to be too busy all the time. There, many of them are so busy, and all their calendars like till the middle of the night fill. And we hear it from, I heard from Warren Buffett and Bill Gates talking about how many hours they are sleeping at night. 4 hours, 2 hours a night, whatever. And for me, it doesn't make sense because you need time just to stop and think, and even just time to breathe. It sounds interesting and important for me. So I think it's only what they want people to think about them. This is how I see it. What do you think?
Or how they think about themselves. Yes. So most of our decisions are basically made upon three criteria. I think ego, time, and money. And it's almost always ego. Ego, it's basically, I think, broken down into social and emotional, right? So social is how am I perceived by others, and how do I perceive myself, right? What's the story I'm telling to myself about myself? And we say, most stress is caused by the stories we tell ourselves. So if you can tell yourself a different story and learn from it, then hopefully your stress levels diminish. But yeah, I ask a question. I used to be a speaker for an organization called Vistage, and I spoke to hundreds and hundreds of Vistage CEOs, and I would ask them the same question around this. If your job is to predict the future, if we believe that, and that's about new ideas and innovation and creating a future that you don't have yet. So it's about ideas, and I asked them, describe for me a time when you had a really good idea. What were you doing? And invariably the answer is I was in the shower, I was on a run, I was riding my bike, I was just bored, I was just hanging out. Yeah, that's when your ideas come, because when your mind is quiet. And if you're always doing, it's very hard to do and think at the same time. It'll happen once in a while, but it's much easier for your brain to connect to loosely connected ideas. That's an insight. The flash of insight is really a physical change in your brain. And that's when that idea comes to you. Two things that you probably collected over the years or over time, just connected. And you're like, oh, Velcro,
Yeah.
How do I extend my things? And I was out in the woods. Oh my goodness. Right. And I came up with Velcro. So that's what they need to do. That's why I say you need to fire yourself from the day to day. And that's what I do. I help them fire themselves from the day to day. Is over about 1.5 to 2 years, they do less and less and less in running the business, and more doing of creating the future of the business.
Yeah. You know, when you said about like when they're doing or when they're like resting, I think it's like instead of doing is just being. And when you're being, and most businesses don't talk about being, it sounds too spiritual, right? Like go and do mindfulness and breathe or something like that. But I think it's so important for people who lead other people to be aware that sometimes when you're doing that much, and workaholic is just the addiction that everybody loves, right? Everybody appreciates a
Yeah.
workaholic. So it's not always good, not for you, not for your like surrounding your family, and not to your worker people who work with you or employees. And
Yeah. So if working gives you energy, then that's okay, right? But if it's draining you, then that's usually when you have issues. There are two types of stress: there's eustress, which is good stress, and there's distress, which is bad stress. And we want to have eustress as more often than not. But I'm separating, so you can